Warning: what you are about to see is highly controversial. Viewer discretion is advised. 10 months of extensive research into the most jealously guarded governmental secrets have led me to one dramatic conclusion. By the order of a superior power, tens of millions of us are about to be disposed of. The wheels of this apocalyptic plot have been set in motion years ago, but the effects are only just showing. In fact, it was Senator Ted Cruz's father, Rafael, who first unearthed this wretched conspiracy. I have no doubt the facts I'm about to reveal will cause a massive tsunami within our government, and some serious heads will fall as a result. It's why I hope you'll understand why I choose not to reveal my true identity. What I am going to tell you is this: as an independent investigator, I made it my mission to debunk the climate change agenda. To me and millions of others, this was nothing but a manufactured crisis. We needed a distraction, something to make us turn our heads the other way, while ignoring the true disasters caused by the elites. This is why I was so intrigued by the Western drought, because it gives climate change believers exactly the excuse they need in order to shove some more of their freedom-gutting regulations down our throats. However, in my latest research, I discovered the Western drought is nothing but a smokescreen to a plot so sinister it would send chills down the spines of even the most hardcore liberals. In the next few minutes, you're about to find out why the current Western water shortage is by no means a product of man-made climate change, but the result of a type of covert chemical warfare. And why, in the name of Agenda 21, a third of the U.S. population will be left to die of thirst when water becomes scarcer than diamonds and more expensive than liquid gold. Plus, towards the end of this short documentary, you'll find out how to make sure you and your family don't end up at the wrong end of the biggest genocide attempt in modern history. Because, as you're about to see, my investigation led me to believe that by following the orders of a dark, criminal, one-government global authority, Obama and his liberal cronies have set a target on the heads of over 100 million Americans. Their dire plan is hidden below 3 deep layers of governmental lies. I call them the 3 omens of doom. For they could bring a never-before-seen humanitarian crisis and transform hundreds of America's cities into monstrous graveyards hosting the bodies of the innocent slaughtered by the will of our own government. The first omen is deceit. You and I both have time and time again heard Obama and his sidekicks play the man-made global warming tape. However, weather experts firmly contradict this theory. In fact, according to them and some of the most recent computer projections, if the whole global warming theory were real, the western part of our country should be getting wetter, not drier. Truth is, there is absolutely no evidence, scientific or any other sort, that actually supports this theory. Not even the high carbon emission theory climate alarmists have been feeding us doesn't stand. You see, after I looked into the 20th century temperature record, I came across an astonishing discovery. I found there was an up and down pattern that had nothing to do with the Industrial Revolution's upward march of carbon dioxide emissions. Instead, the cycle followed an up and down pattern of naturally caused climate courses. You see, every 25 or 30 years, the oceans undergo a natural cycle where the colder water below churns up to replace the warmer water at the surface. For instance, temperatures dropped steadily from the late 1940s to the late 1970s. Ironically, back then there was hysteria about a coming ice age. However, the situation took a turn in the late 70s. That's when temperatures started rising, and they kept their ascent until the late 90s. Then the Earth entered another temperature drop-off cycle. But contrary to the real climate science, in 2000, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change predicted that global temperatures would rise by 1 degree Celsius by 2010. You can see the result with your own eyes in the following chart. Not only did temperatures not rise, they actually dropped by well over a degree. And they'll continue to drop for another 15 years or so. And yet, global warming seems to be the politicians' favorite scapegoat. However, As I soon discovered, it's only camouflage, a distraction, used to set the scene of what I think will be a massive depopulation plan that will engulf the entire country within the next 12 months. Which leads me to the second omen of doom: war. But not the kind you have in mind. In the war I'm talking about, no bullets were fired, no bombs were dropped, no troops were deployed. And even though the battle still rages and millions will die because of it, only a handful of people are aware of its sweeping consequences in the U.S. population. I'm talking about weather warfare. Although most never mentioned it in the debates on climate change, the weather can be modified using advanced electromagnetic weaponry. Here in America, the weather modification program is over 70 years old. Back in the 50s and 60s, Life magazine went on a frenzy covering U.S. weather modification programs. One of their biggest stories was on Project Storm Fury, which redirected and reduced hurricane intensity from 1962 to 1983. The following article reads, "To whom it may concern, notice is hereby given that it is the intent of the Water Resources Development Corporation to engage in operations to modify natural precipitation by artificial means." And that's not all. During the Vietnam War, the U.S. military seeded clouds with both silver and lead iodide in order to extend the monsoon season and block enemy supply routes along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And the U.S. military has been on a continuous path of improving and developing new weapons to include in their weather warfare arsenal ever since. One of their biggest breakthroughs came with the creation of stratospheric aerosol geoengineering, or SAG. Allegedly, this geoengineering patent has the stated goal of slowing down global warming. But if we know for a fact that global warming is a hoax, what are the true purposes of these geoengineering programs? Look for anyone who has closely tracked the crazy weather patterns that caused the drought. It should be very obvious that something is very wrong. Western states receive most of their precipitation during winter months. For instance, California's snowpack stores 12 million acre-feet of water. That's more than California's cities use in 1 year. But ever since the drought has started, the snowpack has been on a constant decline. The situation has become so drastic that this year's level is at only 5% of the average. So like any investigator would do, I asked a few weather experts who happened to be residents of the most drought-stricken areas what changed, but all of them gave me the same answer: nothing. The winter storm fronts that brought in the precipitation were still there. However, 2 days before the storms were supposed to hit, something weird would happen. As if a magician would cast a spell, the storm fronts would all vanish into thin air, like they never even existed in the first place. How was this possible? It was not global warming, and definitely not high carbon emissions or any of that nonsense. The answer came from a small farmer in Tahoe City, California. He too noticed an unusual pattern that emerged immediately after the Weather Channel announced a storm front to pass through. He told me that right when the rain clouds began gathering, he'd start hearing jet engines. Soon after, the area would end up receiving absolutely no rain, even though predicted, or a very negligible amount. Plus, when the clouds broke up, the air would usually have a strange, opaque white cast to it. You may know this phenomenon by the name of chemtrails. They're the result of millions of tons of highly toxic metal nanoparticulates released into the atmosphere from the U.S. Navy jet aircrafts. It's the reason why I firmly state that our government is the one who intentionally created this unparalleled water crisis. Take a look at the image below. It was taken on early June 2014. The grid pattern spraying for toxic aerosols over the Pacific could not be more obvious. Now let's take a look at how that spraying affects America. This map was published by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. It shows an unprecedented pattern of precipitation. While almost the entire country is shown at above normal level, the western U.S. looks like it has a bullseye of below normal rainfall predicted. You see, in today's America, the ones controlling the weather modification programs dictate who gets rain and who doesn't. Here's another one from the NOAA. Does this seem natural to you? The western U.S. fires and dries while the eastern U.S. gets the exact opposite. The big question is, why? Before I go ahead and give you the answer to that question, I need to expose the third and final omen of doom: betrayal. Look, both Obama and his administration are nothing but puppets on a string, controlled by a far bigger power, serving one real purpose: the implementation of Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is a comprehensive blueprint of global, national, and local actions implemented by organizations of the UN, governments, and major groups in every area in which humans allegedly harm the environment. In truth, this UN-led program aims to spawn authoritarian states where individuals are stripped of all personal rights and freedoms. Does that sound familiar to what's happening inside the U.S. now? The liberties for which our founding fathers fought and shed blood are vanishing by the day, all while most Americans lull themselves into a collective coma with Dancing with the Stars or America's Got Talent. Agenda 21 is real, and it's being implemented right before our very eyes. Respected people have been shouting about it for a while now. Take Senator Ted Cruz's father, Rafael. He went on public with his statement in which he blames the United Nations and their Agenda 21 for the weather.
Have any of you heard of Agenda 21? Agenda 21 is all about confiscation of private property. It's all about the worship of Mother Earth. They've created a drought in Southern California to save a little fish, little minnow.
You see, Rafael Cruz found out what was going on way before I did, but he's not the only one to bring up Agenda 21 in his speech. Republican State Senator Joni Ernst has raised fears that Agenda 21 could lead to moving people off of their land and telling them they no longer have property rights anymore. And that's not all. In 2012, the Republican National Committee drafted a resolution opposing Agenda 21. They called it a comprehensive plan of extreme environmentalism, social engineering, and global political control. So what's Agenda 21 got to do with the artificially engineered Western drought? The answer is everything. Because Agenda 21's plans for America look like this. All the red areas on the map are core reserves and corridors, not meant for human use. And as you see, the whole western U.S. is overflowing with them. The only zones that will be habitable are the ones within the turquoise territory from the eastern part of the U.S. California Governor Jerry Brown said it himself that California, the biggest populated state in the U.S., is only fit to sustain 300,000 people. So what's to happen to the rest of the 38.7 million? I'll let you fill in the blanks. And it's not like they're even trying to hide it anymore. Because despite the historic drought conditions, the western U.S. could still be overflowing with water, if the government actually allowed it to. Listen, our Constitution, the one who Obama allegedly swore to protect and defend, guarantees Americans our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But in 21st century America, a minnow baitfish is more important to the government than all those things combined. I'm talking about the Delta smelt. It's because of this fish, hundreds of millions of gallons of fresh water from the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta are squandered. Now, I'm not saying we need to completely ignore the environment around us, and I'm all for saving animals, but we're talking about a fish no bigger than your middle finger that contributes nothing to the great scheme of things on the planet. One that the government has put above the people it's supposed to serve and protect. Because of this fish, the water that could sustain 4.4 million families gets squandered, all while good folks from poorer communities literally don't have water coming out of their taps anymore. And let's not forget how Jerry Brown's 25% mandatory water reduction only affects home water users and small businesses, all while greedy, lobbying corporations are literally leaving America bone dry. And they're making mammoth profits out of it, too. For instance, billionaire farmer Stuart Resnick bragged about record profits and record production in water-intensive crops like pistachios, almonds, or alfalfa. In case you didn't know, 80% of this country's water resources go to big ag. Let's not forget Nestle. Despite historic drought conditions, Obama allowed them to drain water from our aquifers and sell it back to us at colossal profits for them. I mean, a 2.5-gallon jug costs $13. You know how much it cost them to pump our water out of our ground? 65 freaking cents for 470 gallons. And if that weren't enough, the Obama administration used a loophole in our current water protection laws that allows them to sell fresh water from the Great Lakes to China. You need to face the harsh truth. All the actions taken by our government support the same dire outcome: depopulation. The reality is, to the elites, we're nothing but useless eaters. That's what they're calling us. Until now, they needed us. They needed someone to pick the crops, paint the houses, and basically run the economy. But now, with the advancement of technology, a robot can do the job of 5 people 5 times faster. And it doesn't even need a paycheck. These robots have already started taking away our jobs. You know this too well. It's the biggest reason why as many as 30 million Americans are either out of work or severely underemployed. To the rich and powerful, all these people are considered a burden. And what better way to get rid of this burden if not by taking away our water? According to NASA scientist Jay Famigletti, California only has a 1-year supply of water remaining. Can you imagine what it will be like when people open their taps and instead of water, dust will come out? We're running out of time here. Unless a miracle happens, 1 year from now, the whole USA will no longer have a public water supply. The only water that'll be left will be controlled by the elites and their big corporations. The water you're now paying $13 for 2.5 gallons will soon cost 10, 20, perhaps 50 times as much. And what do you think people will do when they'll no longer be able to afford a basic yet crucial item as water? You can bet your bottom dollar that people all around America will come out and riot. The situation will become so desperate, they'll even start fighting and killing each other over a sip of water. Most will simply die of thirst. Plenty of others will get crammed up by Obama's militarized police in FEMA concentration camps. This might look taken out of a Hollywood scenario, but it's what I think the elites have been silently preparing for us. And you, your family, and your loved ones risk being the government's sacrificial lambs. But it doesn't have to be like this. I found this insanely effective technique I'm going to share with you in a couple of moments while I was looking for alternative ways of ensuring my own family's survival. Look, after digging up layer after layer of lies our government has shamelessly been feeding us and uncovering their apocalyptic agenda, I could barely get 2 hours of sleep per night. I remember having a nightmare where my youngest daughter would come to me holding her teddy bear in one hand and an empty glass in the other, and with big, sad, teary eyes, she'd say, "Daddy, me and Teddy are thirsty. Why is there no water left?" And all I could do was hold her in my arms and whisper in her ear, "I'll get some right away. Everything's going to be just fine." Even though I knew I was telling her a big fat lie. There just isn't a worse feeling than knowing you are not able to protect your loved ones. And because of that, they're now in a position where they have to suffer. I felt mad. Mad at the butcher government. But on top of all, mad at myself. I was the head of the family. They all counted on my protection. When I woke up from this nightmare, I swore right then and there that my family and my little girl will never have to suffer the grim fate the government planned for them. Now, the next morning I thought that if my family were to survive, I needed my own water supply. At that time, starting a water stockpile seemed a good place to start. So I took a trip to Walmart and busted almost $500 on a little over a 1-month supply for my family of 4. However, when I handed my credit card to the cashier, I had this strange feeling, like I was giving blood to my archenemy. I bought that water anyway, but I decided it was the last time my money would contribute to corporations' mammoth profits. Plus, when I got back home, I ran into another problem. All that water took up nearly all of the remaining free space from my pantry. That's when I knew building a water supply wasn't the solution I needed. I knew I needed something that could provide me and my family an endless supply of water. So I thought of digging a well. The idea seemed perfect. I paid an expert to run a study to determine how deep I had to drill the well in order to make sure I'd never have the problem of running out of water. The results was discouraging to say the least. Since I had to drill the well 535 feet below, the whole investment, together with the well digging permits, would have cost me around $10,000. I simply couldn't afford that much. But I didn't get discouraged. And luckily enough, my persistence paid off. I stumbled upon a story of how people from the Arabian desert use a weird device that allows them to effectively draw water out of the air. As you know, water is in the air nearly everywhere on Earth, even in the most parched desert. But since most of it is in vaporized form, it doesn't do us any good. However, this device allows people to capture those water vapors and transform them in their handy liquid state. Amazing, right? In fact, it was so powerful, it allowed these people a virtually endless supply of clean drinking water. It was as though they had their own private, endless spring of water. I knew I was onto something, so I wanted to find out more about this magical mechanism. As it turns out, there are nothing but stories of success around it. Even the Army is using them, and they're getting up to 450 gallons of clean water a day. The catch? The military pay anywhere between $18,000 and $30,000 for one piece. But the science behind this device is relatively simple. It's why the idea of putting one together with my own hands started forming in the back of my mind. But the more I learned about it, the more I got excited. The more I got excited, the more frustrating it got. Because as someone who hasn't held a screwdriver in his hand since finishing high school, you can imagine I had no idea what to start off with. Everything I found online seemed to be put together by MIT professors for MIT students. It was all too academic and complex for me to comprehend. I realized I was going nowhere on my own. So I did what any other desperate father would do when the safety of his family is in his hands. I found a part-time inventor and paid him to help me make my own simple, inexpensive, and highly efficient endless water device. The only two rules I had for him were simple. I had to make this with my own two hands, and he had to show me how without any academic mumbo-jumbo. This needed to be the ultimate blueprint for the absolute beginner who has zero DIY experience. We agreed on this deal and we got to work. We set up an online video session where he walked me and my daughter step by step into every single phase of the project. Every time we made a mistake, he patiently would tell us about it and help us correct it. The end result was nothing short of amazing. In a little over 60 minutes, with the help of my daughter, and without spending more than a couple $100, almost half of which went on purchasing a dehumidifier I could have gotten for free, I managed to create my own water-generating device. All I had to do next is make sure it really did the job, take the humidity out of the air, and transform it into pure, crystal-clear drinking water. So I left it on overnight and made sure to check on it the next morning. Now, as you probably know, the air humidity is normally higher during the day, so I didn't expect much. I would have been pleased to get a couple of liters. You can imagine the wide grin on my face when I found out my device had produced almost 1 gallon of water in only a few short hours and running at probably half its capacity. It felt like having my personal spring of pure and healthy water right in my living room. I knew I'd get even more water during the day, which I did, gallons upon gallons of it. I couldn't believe my eyes, and all in less than half a day, and all for a measly 9 cents for every hour my water apparatus was plugged in. I don't know about you, but to me, this was a small price to pay. I mean, if you add that up, the 4 gallons of water I produced that day only cost me 99 cents. Considering I would have had to pay at least $20 to get that much water from the supermarket, those extra few cents on the electricity bill was a compromise I was more than willing to make. After all, I was actually saving money. The next week, I jumped in my car and drove over to my brother's. When I told him about my new gadget, he got so excited he insisted I show him how to make one for his own family right then. Now, since I didn't have my recorded expert video session on me, I was a little reluctant. The fact that, just like me, my brother isn't exactly what you'd call handy didn't help either. However, he was so fired up then, it was hard for me to say no. So we took a trip to the nearest hardware store, bought everything we needed, and got to work. And even though it took us the whole afternoon, I was able to recreate my water-generating device without an expert looking over my shoulder. It was like all the information I needed was downloaded in my brain when I first built it for myself. 2 days later, I got a phone call. It was my brother. "Man, you have outdone yourself this time. This is like having Niagara Falls in my living room. Everyone should have one of these in their own home." He was right. My system needed to be made available to every God-loving, hard-working American. So I packaged the whole material, the look-over-my-shoulder video session where an expert shows you how to make your own water-generating device, along with the step-by-step written instructions that go along with it, and called it the Water Revolution System. If me and my daughter were able to use these blueprints and manage to get an endless water supply, if I was able to actually show my brother how to replicate my success without any outside expertise, then this is probably the simplest, easiest A to Z layout anyone can use to get their own endless water supply. Not only will this system help you break loose of the corporation chains and save you hundreds, perhaps thousands of dollars, but most of all, it will guarantee you and your family never end up on the wrong side of our government's criminal agenda. It will give you the peace of mind you deserve. All you need to do is push the play button once and watch this straightforward video. You'll be stunned at how easy and quick it is to set up your very own spring of fresh, pure, clean water right in your home, and at how much water you're going to get out of it. Plus, if you try out the Water Revolution system today, you'll also get 2 very important bonuses. These bonuses are free, and you won't find them anywhere else. Bonus number 1, accelerated food growing system. Since the water shortage will also hit hard in America's food supply, I want to give you a cheat code for growing your own food. This bonus contains another video where you'll see how to build your own greenhouse so you can grow food year-round. One of the biggest assets of a greenhouse is it can help you make serious amounts of money by selling those extra vegetables you produce that aren't typically available during the winter in your area. Bonus number 2, emergency water, how to stay hydrated in the wilderness. Listen, it's hard to admit this, but you always have to take into account the fact that if a crisis strikes, you might be forced to abandon your home. This bonus contains an insanely effective and easy-to-use technique to help you quench your thirst when in a wilderness survival situation. Plus, you'll also discover a simple tweak you can apply to it that will help you greatly increase your water harvest. You'll get these 2 bonuses absolutely free if you test my Water Revolution system today. By now, I'm sure you're wondering how much you have to invest to try my system now. When I first decided I wanted to make this available to the wide public, I set up a few meetings with some of those fancy publishers. They said they'd help me share my program with everyone out there. However, all they cared about was how to turn my system into their best paycheck yet. Someone even offered me $25,000 for my patent rights, but they wanted to put a price tag of over $1,000 for one unit. Naturally, I told them to beat it. Water Revolution was born from the idea that it needed to be affordable for everyone. There was one honest guy, however, who opened my eyes to another possibility. Share my system over the internet, which is what I'm doing today. So far, I paid more than I'd like to admit on hosting services and on advertisements. That I don't even expect to cover my investment. But if I end up saving the lives of some true American patriots like yourself, I know it will be well worth the price. Now let me ask you this. How much is it worth to you to know that your family's health, liberty, and well-being are insured, shielded against the coming crisis? And how will you feel 1 year from now when America's public water supply will collapse and water prices will skyrocket? knowing you could have opted out of paying hundreds of dollars on a few gallons of water, but chose not to. My Water Revolution program will show you how to set up your own system that will generate you an endless supply of water for Kingdom Come in as little as a couple of hours. You've seen how greedy agencies would have asked $1,000 for the exact same material I'm putting on the table right now. But you know I'm not going to ask you that much, even though deep down you too realize it's worth at least that. It's not going to cost you $500 either. In fact, it's not going to cost you the $137 my accountant says should be the absolute minimum I should offer this program for, in order to have any chances of getting back my investment. Instead, to make sure this program goes to as many people as possible, and as long as I can afford keeping this video online, I'll let you have the program for only $39. And remember, the money you're spending today is money that keeps this video online, so more God-loving Americans can have a chance of surviving the coming water crisis. The only way you can contribute to my cause is to click the Add to Cart button now. I have no idea how long I'm going to be able to keep this page up, so you need to take action immediately. Plus, because I want you to feel 100% confident about grabbing my Water Revolution system today, I want to offer you my full 60 days, no questions asked, money-back guarantee. Simply click the Add to Cart button below and claim your copy of the Water Revolution. Watch the short video and try to really absorb the information shown there. Put it to use. If you aren't 100% satisfied at the amount of water you're getting from the device, if you don't believe with all your heart that using it will not only save you and your family hundreds, perhaps thousands of dollars on your water bill, but will keep them alive during America's greatest humanitarian crisis, all you have to do is simply shoot me an email and I'll refund your tiny investment right away. No questions asked, and we part as friends, and you even get to keep what you learned up to that point. However, I'm sure that once you get to use my system, you'll see how it really pays for itself. Plus, to sweeten the pot even more, the first 100 people who take action right now receive 365 days unlimited email support. That means that if somehow you get stuck somewhere on the road to getting your endless water generating device, you can send an email and ask for our help to get you unstuck. All you have to do is click the big Add to Cart button below. You've got a simple choice to make. Right now, you're at a crossroads that's going to affect more than your bank account. Your family's safety, survival, and well-being are all at stake. And when you think about it, you have three options ahead of you. Option number 1, ignore my warning and do nothing. Let this video end, leave the site, and hope nothing bad will ever happen. Believe me, there's nothing more I'd like than to be wrong. But deep down, you too know our government won't suddenly start caring about its own. You know corporations won't somehow decide to give up on a tiny amount of their mammoth profits and actually give something back to society. And you realize the elites are never going to give a rat's behind for the little guys like us. Option number 2. You can take what you've learned here today and try to figure out a way to create your own endless water generator. Although a way better idea than deciding to take no action at all, I can tell you from experience that this will not only consume a hefty portion of your budget, but it will also rob you of all your time. You have to ask yourself, is it really worth it? What's the point of wasting thousands of dollars on something you can get for just $39? I know that if I had this opportunity then, I would have jumped on it immediately. But I wasn't as lucky as you are now, because, as far as I know, there's no other program like this in existence, which leads me to option number 3. You can get all my hard-learned lessons the lazy man's way. You get all my shortcuts, all my cheat codes, in a beginner-friendly package for only $39. And like I told you, your $39 could help others discover this amazing life and money-saving device. This isn't about saving money or getting back at the corporations. It's about stepping up and taking care of your loved ones. Honestly, there's just no better feeling than it. Years from now, you're going to look back and congratulate yourself for this decision. So click the Add to Cart button now. There's another bonus waiting for you on the next page, one that's too hot to mention here.